All right, all right. Welcome. It's September 7th. Got a great session today. Thanks for coming. If you're viewing after the tape session, welcome. We're going to talk about eGaming and office technology, and I've got we've got a great guest, great people to talk to, good subject matter, unique. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring everyone in. We're going to talk about eGaming and office tech, the overlap, and hopefully get into some other cool subject matter. My name is Greg Walters. I'm here to talk about a bunch of different stuff about gaming. But like brief introduction to me, I started in technology in, oh my goodness, a long time ago, 1989-ish. And started selling, I'd love to tease about this, is I started selling door-to-door PS2s, IBMs, little model, compacts, all the old school stuff. With me today is Dustin Downs. Now, we're here from Gap Intelligence to talk about the overlap between office technology, as I mentioned before, and gaming. My background comes from technology, business technology, from Novell Networks all the way up to artificial intelligence in the last couple months. I wouldn't call myself an avid gamer, but I will start with this. So I started gaming in '99. My wife at the time bought me, well, as you can see, here's Dustin. Hi, Dustin. Let me get this over with and we'll get into your introduction. She bought me, that you'll love this one, Dustin, a set of CDs that had games on it. And one of them was Doom, right? I think it was 99. It could have been 2000. I don't even remember. I think it was 99. Could have been earlier. So I put it in, and if you remember, it was like one of the very first-person shooters. It had to be VGA. I might even have done it on CJ, but it was like cartoon characters and shooting guns and stuff. But back then, it was cool. It was so cool. Fast forward a few years, and then Quake came out, and that just blew everything away. The Quake graphic engine was just incredible. So from that point on, I went to Quake, Unreal, Halo. No, Half-Life. Never did Halo. Always the keyboards, never the thumbs. And what's interesting is built a community back then. And I got some great stories to talk about that. But for now, Dustin, I know you're from Gap. Give us a brief introduction of who you are, what you do, and how the gaming thing works in your world. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. I have to jump in. So it was Duke Nukem for me. I remember seeing, and I'm gonna date myself. I remember going into a Circuit City, seeing that being played as a demo on one of the computers there, and I was just enthralled by it. So I remember actually being able to get that on PC. And yeah, it is basically 2D graphics almost, but in the first-person shooter sense. And that was my introduction to it. And then it was moving on to the Quakes and everything after that. Thanks for having me on, Greg. Dustin Downs, I'm a business director at Gap Intelligence. Been with the company for around 8 years now, and I'm also editor at the Gaming Tab, which has been an endeavor we've been working on for over a year now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. And I guess I should plug or talk about Office Tech Tab. We've got tabs. It's the theme. Office Technology Tab is all about office technology. Everything from copiers, printers to whatever. Anything that, not staplers. Well, okay, maybe staplers, but pretty much OTT. And Gap is an analytic firm within our industry. So okay. The overall theme here is the overlap between office technology and gaming. Now, my personal belief, and I think we just proven it, there is an overlap when you talk about the people, right? And I think LAN parties. I'm Dustin. Have you ever you've done a LAN party, right? Back in the old days, when I worked at Icon, we would come in on a Saturday, and there'd be 5 of us. We would set up a LAN in the office, and that was Half-Life. And it was a blast. So from LAN parties to now where it's at is incredible. But using the technology, I don't know where I was going with that. But so I think the people overlap, right? The IT guys have always been gamers, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, the overlap with just technology.
Right. So, and then I'll just throw this one on here. A lot of people don't know this, and we can talk about it. So you talked about Quake, and then after Quake there was Unreal, and Unreal. So I guess even back up, and even NVIDIA was out there later. So you have these graphic engines, software that would be able to address multiple pixels. All technical. All it did is it made the picture that you were watching even more vivid, highly, real life, quote unquote. But the graphics went from like 8-bit to 128-bit. It was just incredible. So you had what was called the Quake engine. So it was a video. Correct me. It was a video engine that actually other applications could use to help generate their video, and it was great. But then when Unreal came out, the engine was more popular than the game, in my opinion. I mean, how would you? Well, let me finish this thought. Is anyone is watching the Disney Channel, The Mandalorian, right? And here's the crossover. It's especially relevant today because of the strike in Hollywood and everything like that. In the olden days, when you did like Lost in Space, Star Trek, you went to the old sci-fi. You didn't have green screens. You did real effects, and then you brought in green screens, which is similar to what we use on these sessions. Like this is a background projected video by video. It's not there, so the actor has to really act. Well, with Mandalorian, they were using they used the Unreal Engine to actually project life-size images on screens in the studio. So when the actor's walking, it's more than that. When the actor walks, the whole background moves as though he's he's in the actual environment. And that was an Unreal Engine. So there's one huge crossover. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I definitely think that the Unreal Engine has now grown well beyond, and I mean, Unreal Tournament is a classic game that was, among the first kind of groundbreaking first-person shooters, competitive first-person shooters. But the Unreal Engine now is used to build so many games, and it's used to build so much more. There's an awesome demo you can look up online for. It's literally just built as a Unreal demo, and it's essentially what looks like a Matrix, like the movie, 1999 classic, The Matrix video game. Game doesn't exist, but it's just essentially showing the capabilities of what this engine is capable of nowadays. So that is something that has been used in so many games and going to continue to grow, expand, and be the engine literally behind a lot of top games that are coming out.
Right. So in another crossover, and then, all right. So it creates an environment that looks real. It looks unreal. And think about meta. And I'm trying to bring that crossover into the office environment or into the non-gamer environment. I mean, meta. I think we can agree, pretty much flopped relative to what they wanted it to be. And it's almost like HP's Second Life and all the other virtual lifestyles or whatever, virtual environments.
The metaverse, yeah.
Yeah, the metaverse. How do you figure that in with this?
That's a good one. I think we are still so far away from seeing any type of VR universe taking over, regardless of who's throwing money at it. There's just so many limitations with technology. And there's a lot of applications that we've heard of, in different industries where VR could come into play. We've seen Apple now investing in it with their kind of augmented reality headset. Now I'm blanking on the name, but it was announced, a few months back. But you could see even with that, even with Apple being, a leader in tech, they still have that headset that has this, big giant cord that has to feed to a battery that you have to keep in your pocket as you're walking around. So, until we get to kind of more of that Ready Player One, where it's a simple, very small device that lets you connect with one of those virtual worlds, it's not going to take over like a lot of tech giants are hoping. I do think, though, that that augmented reality, that imposed screens or imposed layovers on the real world that you could see, I think that has a lot more near future applications than a just completely virtual one.
Right. And it wasn't, what was that game that was played years ago where you had to walk around through the world and collect, it was a Pokemon thing, wasn't it?
Pokemon Go, yeah. That was a great example of a very simple way to integrate AR into a game that people were able to walk around and I mean, it was pretty popular and still played today.
Yeah, it was probably. But the premise there is, when you say augmented reality, is you take your real world and overlay, great way to put it, video graphics that are projected from some other device. And a great example is, just the glasses, right? So you have a pair of glasses, you can see through the real world, but it projects something. I think what'd you do? Didn't you walk around with a phone? That's right. That's right. The phone
That's all it was.
camera.
Yeah.
I never played it, but I remember hearing about it, and it did take. Okay, that's cool. And that see, there's a gaming now. So on if we talk about copiers right now, which of course is probably the most interesting subject matter ever, they all need to be serviced, and we have service guys. And I think Xerox is big on this augmented reality thing, where they're equipping technicians with the glasses. And now this is the way they're doing it is the tech can be out in the field trying to fix a machine and then access whatever they need, like manuals, parts, and how to do's and stuff like that right there on the screen. But also connect with other technicians so that another technician in another spot can see what he's looking at and then advise how to go about fixing that. So it's almost like the virtual surgery, when the surgeons are doing surgery, doctors
What I
in
was
San
thinking
Francisco,
about, yeah.
and they're doing it. So there's a crossover like crazy, isn't there? I mean, that's pretty cool. Wow.
Yeah, I think we're going to see more of that crossover with AR in various industries. I think that gaming might help kind of push it and maybe demonstrate what it's capable of, and that will help then see like, okay, this can be applied to these other areas in different industries.
So talk about gaming for a second. So you've been around. I mean, I think I can remember the day when I saw people watching other people play video games, and it was like, how the heck can anything come out of that? Obviously, I mean, there's filling stadiums with people watching teams of people play video games. And here comes one of my little stories. Okay, so Quake 3 Arena was playing, 2004, 5, in that range, right? And it became almost the New World's poker party. So we would get on, and there'd be a set, and the server, I think, could take 40 people max, and it'd be the same 30 guys that would get on every night or every Friday. And in those days, yeah, you could team talk to each other, and it was free-for-all. It wasn't teams per se. It was, slaughterhouse. Every man for himself. The guy who had the most kills is the winner of the round. So the server could take 40. We might get 30 guys in, but then the other 10 would be filled up with what we call specs, right? Guys who would just come in. They didn't want to play. They were just there. Well, what they were doing is watching us play. And at the time, it's like, why would anyone do that? Until one night, some guy, I forgot, they can see it through your eyes. Now, our server, we went low grav with grappling hooks, and we modified the shotguns to be missile, all sorts of weird, fast stuff. So it was actually pretty cool. When I stopped, it was actually because, your icon is flying through the air, your eye, So there was, night after night after night, there'd be more and more people who would be speccing and watching this. I should have gotten it back then. Point being, and I really want to get your commentary on this, the eGaming industry, right? First of all, how did that evolve? Where's it at right now? And what do you think about it in the next 5, 10, 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. First, I got to share because I think you'll appreciate this. So I played Quake 3 Arena on the Dreamcast. I played it online by plugging it into dial-up. Literally, that was what, there was a port on the back that you plugged your phone line into to play online.
Dial-up?
Yeah. That's probably the oldest sentence I've said in a long time. Yeah. Plugging the Dreamcast into dial-up. So, but yeah, so eGaming or streaming, watching other people play games is really interesting. That's exploded in popularity thanks to platforms like Twitch. So I'm an avid gamer myself, maybe because I started, playing for so long before that existed. I'm not really interested in watching other people play, but I heard someone kind of describe it this way, where so why would you want to watch someone else play a game? We watch people play football and baseball and other sports. You're not participating in it. You're watching other people play it all the time, and no one thinks, a second thought on that at all. So I thought that was kind of a good way to put it, that you're, and then two, people may be playing a, like a horror movie themed game that they're a little too scared to play themselves. They can enjoy watching someone else experience it.
Yeah.
Or, you're watching people that you are sometimes watching people at the top of their game. You're watching the best players in the world. Same thing that you may not want to go and watch a a Little League baseball game, but you would want to watch MLB because those are people at the top of their game. I think that's another draw to it, is you're watching people that are able to achieve something that you cannot within your own abilities.
That's true. That's true about all sports, really, if you think about it. And what makes it even more interesting, to me at least, is that, if anyone was ever a Little League baseball player, and a lot of us were, we can identify with what we see and appreciate what's going on. I would say with football, if you ever, you don't have to be a professional football player or get to that level to understand and appreciate what you see. It's like, wow, okay, that's pretty good. I remember when I had, could never do that, whatever. But what I find it's very interesting is the cultural shift, and I think it's generational, because there was a time when you would play, I think it was Nintendo, right? It was back in the old days. You'd play these games in high school, and as soon as you got out of high school, you left the games. You went to college, and you didn't play any of these games until you got out, and maybe you did. You would never bring an NES or a console to a dorm room. It just didn't happen. Now, and I've noticed it, people are bringing their gear with them on vacation. And it's okay, right? It's not just, oh, that's weird. No, it's just, whatever. It's what I do.
Oh yeah,
Total difference.
there was a big shift in. I mean, it'd be fun to try to pinpoint, but I don't think there's a pinpoint. I think it was a general shift to gaming becoming something that's a lot more mainstream.
Mainstream, yeah.
And I think when you think about it, the platforms like Twitch, I'm sure helped the popularity of that. And I mean, there are people today that do not play games at all, but they spend a lot of their time watching other people play.
That's interesting.
Play games. Yeah.
And to back up and give us a quick thumbnail of what Twitch is.
Twitch is really the original platform where you are watching people like stream their games live. And then it's the same kind of thing where you can subscribe to their channel. You can interact with them essentially through a chat during the session. It's like a live YouTube just for gaming. But now it's taken off, and there's other stuff on there where literally some people just go on and chat live like we're doing now.
Right.
And it's there's a lot of competitors coming for it, but right now it's still the king of the streaming platforms.
Yeah. And to bring it even, so when you say watch, it could be what you're actually seeing what they're seeing on the screen, but then there's a camera that shows them actually playing, and then they're communicating with it's at least a dual screen, the gamer, the chat stream, and then the microphone, so you're actually watching them go through the whole thing.
And typically it's the streamer's personality, which is a big driver of it. Is what are they able to provide on top of just playing the game? I mean, it helps if you are extremely good at the game, because people typically want to watch that. But then the personality, the commentary, that's what is also a big driver of the popular ones.
Which is hilarious. Now, back to so anyway, I guess my evolution right now, I'm playing DOD, Day of Defeat, which has got to be a 13, 14-year-old. It's like the most simplest first-person shooter.
You could make an audience on Twitch for it, Greg. I'm telling you, there's some.
Well, when I was getting I could, but I think some of the funniest experiences I've ever had have been online in these game things. You got I mean, these guys are all, in my situation, they're all older, right? I mean, we're not in it for anything more, just to have fun and to quote bullshit with our other guys. And I mean, the funniest conversations come up we had some poor guy online says he wanted to buy a cow, or he wanted to buy a bull. He lives in Texas, or no. We got a guy who lives in Texas on a ranch. We got another guy, I think he lives in Ohio. He wanted to buy a bull, and he wanted to milk the bull. Well, that just was like hilarious for an hour and a half. We kept on teasing the poor dude. He didn't know what he was saying. Well, you can't. Anyway, so the communal thing is actually pretty cool.
And I was going to say, I think that is a huge part of the multiplayer aspect of video games now, where and then services like the Discord, where that is just literally meant for pretty much audio chat that you would have on, to where, you have a group of your friends that you hop in and you sign in Discord, you're all talking, and then you play a game together. It's also, a lot of people are talking about now where it can be a really important part of someone's social circle, is that's how they're interacting, either with, strangers online, or like until they become, you know, friends that you continue playing with, or just with their circle of friends. And now with people spread out, you know, maybe over the US, moving different places, you're able to stay in, you know, contact with people that maybe you wouldn't otherwise.
You're absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And even before COVID, right? I mean, COVID probably really enhanced it a lot. I don't know if I wasn't really playing it that much during COVID. Here's another weird thing, right? So about the community and the society. So I don't know. I left the game for maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Could be in that range, right? Came back after COVID, and I'll be gosh darn if it's not the same people. It's like, what do you guys? Nothing changed. Well, that was a core of guys, right? And then as in the last 12 months, and I don't know what this says, more and more people are coming back in. Oh yeah, I went in. You know, I came back after 8, 9 years. And here's the story: got married, had kids. Kids are out. I'm almost retired or almost retired. Came back, and it's still you guys. I don't know what that says. I don't know, but I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. You know, one thing is interesting with there being so many games available that you are always going to be splitting and fragmenting the potential audience or player base, which can be tough because sometimes you find a game where you're like, oh, I want to keep playing this game. I don't care how old it gets, but it loses more and more people till it becomes essentially where it's unplayable. You can't find enough people in the match,
Yeah, no
but
servers.
because there are so many other games competing for the attention. And when you have some franchises that are essentially releasing new versions of a game almost every year, every couple of years, there are still people that hang on to the one that they like within a 6 series of games. They're still playing one from a few years ago. And so I think that's one thing that is really interesting. It's that everyone's competing for almost the same audience, the same player base. But the more and more games that are out there, the more and more that's being split. And there are some games where, it's been a couple hundred people for a decade, but that's enough of a strong player. Like it sounds like, Day of Defeat, that it's enough to keep the servers on. It's enough to have, matches where you can continuously play it.
Yeah, it's weird. And what I like about, Day of Defeat is not a heavy graphics device. I mean, you can still probably play it on an AT if you really wanted to. It's not heavy saturated graphics like all the other stuff, like Quake and Unreal, those engines, and today's modern games, whatever that is. So, but that I think keeps it alive. But you're right, man. We've got. I was out there last night. A ton of servers show up throughout the world. But any time, I would bet if we totaled it up, there might be less than 150 people playing, and that's okay. We're still there. I mean, it's a weird thing.
And with some of those older games too, it's the players that are essentially hosting the servers and possibly funding it themselves because they want to keep it going.
Ooh, good point. Well, yes, I belong to a group and we kick down cash just to keep the server going. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Huh. Interesting. Okay, here's the big question. Thumbs or keyboard?
So one, I recognize the superiority of mouse and keyboard 100%. But also the human hand is not meant to click a little plastic button 1,000,000 times a day.
Okay.
So interesting enough, you'll find that professional esports player in a game like StarCraft 2, that is an RTS where you are just on the mouse and literally they measure actions per minute. Like you are supposed to be clicking almost nonstop as you're playing the game.
Okay.
Essentially, you age out of that because their hands fail. Your fingers give up from sitting and clicking a mouse 1,000,000,000 times over.
It's carpal tunnel-ish, almost carpal tunnel.
And other issues. I've known people to get steroid injections into their finger to keep going so they can play. Not joking. So I have recognized that I am no longer in prime gaming physique, and I've switched to controller just to save my hands from becoming too crippled over. So
I'm afraid to, because if I do, we're going deep now. I don't know. I can barely work my keyboard, let alone my thumbs. I don't even know. Well, I guess I should try, but.
And I mean, what's interesting too is that the kind of superior performance on mouse and keyboard isn't just an argument. It's I wish I had a controller to kind of demonstrate. But when you think about the thumbsticks moving back and forth from left to right. When you cross over from left to right, there is essentially a dead space where you're not doing any movement until you hit to the right. So there is that kind of lag in time. If you are going from left to right or right to left, you have to cross a dead zone on your controller before you get to the other side. So that's essentially an input lag where you wouldn't have that on, with a mouse.
Wow. Huh. Okay. So, there's probably some physical therapy thing out there for e-gamers that can.
Or maybe that's an emerging. If anyone's looking for business ideas.
Love it. All right, so that's cool stuff. Now let's try and bring it back to office technology. All right, so and NVIDIA. Now I don't know that much about NVIDIA, right? The GPUs and their stock is just blowing up, and I love it because now we can talk about AI. Now I knew NVIDIA prior to this as and I could be wrong, but I always figured them as a gamer's video board. It was like, wasn't NVIDIA in charge of not SVGA, but higher graphics boards, I thought, or is it chips? Do you know the story of NVIDIA? And then talk a little bit more about that, because that's going to cross over for sure.
Yeah, I mean, what I can speak to offhand is that they are the leader in graphics cards that power not only gaming PCs, but consoles. Although I believe AMD is what you find in most modern generation consoles, so it's between NVIDIA and AMD. But I think the crossover is that NVIDIA is not just supplying the graphics cards for PCs; they're also supplying them for data centers and PCs that are meant for other industry stuff like AI, and that is what I believe was considered kind of the drive behind their boom lately in their rising stock price, is that kind of AI frenzy of if they're able to supply the components that can help with this kind of emerging technology.
Yeah, I can speak to that, and you're right. So NVIDIA, I mean, if you think about a graphics card in general from the layperson, think about how the graphics are presented on the screen. It's millions and trillions of calculations and all sorts of gobbledygook to make it look as good as it looks, and it looks even better. The graphic cards, the GPUs, graphic process units, they, in a computer, right, you had a CPU that would process everything in the old days. Then you had a VGA board, a VGA chip that would process the graphics. It would take the information that the other machine or the other components would do and present it on a screen. So that's a VGA thing. Well, NVIDIA was really good at, but to do that, you have to have massive calculation. You have to have some really good algorithms, and then to burn them into a chip, you've got to have the manufacturing site. So they were always good at that. But the ability to be good at that kind of fit right into the ability to work with AI, because now you're already at a higher algorithmic level. So from what I understand right now is NVIDIA is going to burn AI. They're going to have AI capable chips. So out of the box, your machine, and this is why it's so important, is like effectively making most other PCs irrelevant. Because now is your computer AI compliant? No. Well, here it is. This chip does AI. It's built for AI. And by the way, we burnt in ChatGPT. So that's the big buzz there. And it all makes sense when you look back at it. It looks like someone planned it, but that's nothing. No one planned it like this. Like, oh, wow, we could do this. And boom, it went through the roof. But I think because that whole thing with the gaming and the graphics just is going to accelerate all the computing. It's just going to, because making games work is hard work on a computer. It just is. So once you can do that, and you burned AI in it, it's going to trickle down to everything. So, I mean, I don't know how much you know about it, but where do you see, is AI getting into the gaming world yet, or how? Yeah, is it?
A few things on that. One, I think it's interesting to draw parallels with NVIDIA to what happened with like the crypto mining boom, where again, their stock shot up. They couldn't keep enough in supply. Essentially, that was when, GPUs were almost impossible to find for a gaming PC, because everyone was people were buying multiple of them to link them together to essentially, mine
Bitcoins.
Yeah. And then that kind of faded out. And then also, in kind of the last part of that, NVIDIA started making, I believe, GPUs that were designated for gaming and would be kind of like throttled or something if they were used for Bitcoin mining.
Oh,
I believe, because it was like it was essentially gamers were not able to get their hands on these devices that were originally intended
for gamers.
for gamers. So I think it'll be interesting to see how this kind of AI boom plays out with the in parallel. So what happened with the crypto situation.
Yeah. Well, the
But
crypto stuff, yeah.
I mean, and two, because I mean, I think we may be looking at stuff where this is just kind of a first wave of AI, and then we'll refer to this as, oh, this was like the generative AI boom, and then there was another one after that, and another one after that.
Absolutely.
But how I see this playing into video games, I think in the last few months, there's been talk around how that can be incorporated, the generative AI specifically, into in-game NPC dialogue. So NPC, non-playable character, it's just a character that is in the game, and maybe you're walking around in a single-player game, and they're talking to you, and that's based on pre-written lines that a writer wrote. One application that a lot of developers seem to be exploring is, can generative AI be used to essentially make a organic conversation, organic dialogue from these virtual characters that would interact with you in a game. So I think that would probably be one of the first applications we see, or something like, again, just that generative either narrative, or there's a lot of games where it is procedurally generated, where maybe every time you play a map, it's a little different. So we may see something like that, where that aids in that kind of experience.
Well, I can tell you now, even with the current chat level, all right, so I experimented, right? I asked it to take the personality of Johnny Carson. I asked it to interview me and base their questions on my answers, right? So there wasn't a pre-written script. It was, and I did this months ago, just blah, 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 4 o'clock in the morning, whatever. It worked. I was very surprised because, like you said, it's not a pre-written script. There isn't if he answers this, then you ask that. If the whole chain, there was no if then else that I could tell, right? And that's the whole. It probably was.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Is like, if the human being can't tell, like, what does it matter then?
It doesn't matter, yeah. And then I could also see in these, because I don't play the games where you get in with a team per se, right? And you have a certain, so you could have your own cyber, your created team member that isn't a real person, right? And he could guide you through. But I didn't even think, I don't play those games very often where you got the mysterious and like Myst of the old days, and where I've never got into that walking through scary things stuff. Maybe I should, but that would probably be, because you're right, every game could be different. Because right, you get at the end of the game, it's like, oh, well, that's it. Now let's go do multiplayer. So now every time you get on could be different. Wow, that's interesting. So then take that and apply it to a business solution of some sort, which I'm not asking. I'm saying that could absolutely, you could run scenarios. You could run scenarios with a digital assistant that is right there on your screen that looks pretty real, and it's takes, golly, you could take the algorithms from a game and apply it to whatever.
And I mean, we're already seeing, you go on various, retailer websites, and a virtual assistant pops up. But I think we're all very used to that kind of just old school chatbot level of extremely basic commands that they can maybe answer. But I think that's an application we're probably going to see soon, where it's a lot more, realistic, a lot more human responses from something when you just go on a website,
right,
to buy a toaster or something.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's my personal thing about ChatGPT is it's a LLM. It's a large language model. It's going to sound good, even when it's not telling the truth. It's just the way it is, right? It's not pure, in my opinion, artificial intelligence. It's a voice box for it. Now, having said that, it's really good. but once you take it predicts the next word. That's all. And when you think about that, it's like, oh, okay. So it sounds really good. Yeah, we still got to check it. Now, but I'm telling you, for 80-90% of the people who want to use it in the right way, it's great. I mean, it generates content excellent. So on the where else how about in appliances, home appliances? All right. So you have the smart refrigerator. So it would look in your refrigerator and tell you need eggs and then let you know. All right, that seems kind of simple. Where does that edge go with both the gaming side and the AI side and everything? What do you think? What do you see?
That's a good.
It's out there.
Question, because I imagine you've seen with the kind of smart technology of just the ordering supplies ahead of time automatically by sensing it if they're out, which is then what you see essentially with the refrigerator aspect, that it is seeing what's in your fridge and maybe connecting to a service that you're already a part of and ordering something based on your past orders. How that would play into gaming is a good one. I remember, and this is a very old example, but I think one of the MMOs, that's massive multiplayer online game, so a World of Warcraft, I think it's one of its predecessors, had it to where in game you could essentially order a pizza without leaving the game. It was connected to some kind of one of the probably big players in the space, and you didn't have to leave the game. You could do it in game. So I imagine there may be some kind of smart things that come from that, where within the game, it's already connected to external services of some sort, where it's all
dominoes.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what, the whole metaverse thing is going for, where everything's interconnected. You don't have to leave. So I think we may start seeing some applications where, within two, actually, what we've seen is with, you have to name drop Fortnite if we're talking about modern gaming. They hold in-game concerts. Literally, they have, top performers doing a live concert in game, and you are attending it by logging in and playing as your avatar.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool. But you swerved into something I want to talk about. In-game purchases. Talk to me about that business model. It's fascinating to me.
I think that's probably one of the biggest overlaps when we're talking about the office tech space and gaming and other industries too, is the as a service model. So nowadays everything's trying to shift to, you don't own it, you continuously buy something, a piece of it, or you subscribe to it, and gaming has definitely been moving into that direction. So it used to be that you go and you buy a game for 40, 50, 60 bucks. That is the entire game. That is the entire experience. You can play it as much as you want, and you have paid for that game. You now own it.
Shrink wrapped. Yep.
Yeah. A little bit after that, we started seeing DLC, downloadable content, where maybe for 10, 15, 20 bucks, you'd get a little more. They'd expand onto it. Maybe there'd be 1 to 4 of those. Yeah, that you could buy, and it would add to the base game.
Packs and modules.
And now what we're seeing is not everything, but a lot of games are moving towards here's the game for free, completely free. But if you want that additional content, it's going to be microtransactions. So where you're paying for very small pieces of content, or some kind of subscription. Nowadays, a lot of games are just using it as a battle pass, where you are purchasing essentially a limited time subscription, where you are unlocking a path of features or in-game content as you go along. Fortnite really, they were not the first to do this, but I would say they were the first to popularize it. They made it mainstream that you offer a game for free, and then you are essentially making all your money off of these microtransactions or these battle pass subscriptions. And it has proven to be extremely profitable for them. So where we're now seeing companies like Blizzard, who, to give them credit, were, I would say, holdouts in shifting to that model, have now, with all of their modern games, shifted to a microtransaction battle pass subscription, because it's just proven that you can continue to get money from the players, as opposed to that single $40 $50
Right,
purchase.
right. So it's a spin on the subscription, although it is inclusive of the subscription, but it's almost like the freeware. Well, what I remember, I forget what they called that when you give it away for free, but then whatever. So if I understand correctly, and I think I do, but to clarify, so once you're in game, you can make. I've seen that where you can make different purchases, and it could be anything from change my armor to this to now. Is it include upgrades and I mean
Yeah, and
like
that's an important piece of it, is that the model seems to work when it is all cosmetic, or it is something that
okay.
just is not giving you a advantage over other players. That
Mm,
was a big backlash, and any companies that would introduce that, they'd be accused of pay to win, where you could
right.
essentially spend real world money to get an advantage over other players in a multiplayer game. So what has seemed to keep the balance and the peace in the gaming world is if you offer those microtransactions or those battle pass subscription awards as something that is purely cosmetic, that you don't need to play the game, but improves your own experience or whatnot.
Experiential as opposed to I can't upgrade buy my way into a better gun or a better
Yeah,
vehicle or something like that. Well, good, good.
yeah,
So I'm trying to picture how, because right now in the copier industry, we have the machine lease payment, service agreement that's attached to it, and you pay incrementally based on how many pieces of paper come out of the machine. And then on the managed service, the IT side, you pay X amount per user for your support, your email, your firewall, da, 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 da. I'm wondering if there's a way to meld those two models into something. So they're called micro purchases. Is that what you call it? Micro
microtransactions.
transactions. And that by micro, they could be like what, $3, five. I mean, they're really small, right? Is it?
Yeah, it's $5 is probably the minimum on those usually.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Huh. Interesting. But I'm wondering if maybe that's more of a B2C thing, and it may not translate easily into B2B. It might not, but to take some of that in, I have to figure that one out.
Well,
That's fascinating. Yeah. What do
see,
you?
another piece of that too that comes to mind is that mostly when we're talking about this, it's a lot of multiplayer games. Again, you don't want to pay to give an advantage to one person, but with a lot of single player games now too, and especially with mobile games that you would download on your phone, it is all built around microtransactions. Like, it's
Oh,
hard, you'll be hard pressed to find a mobile video game that is not free to download because it's built around microtransactions. But a lot of those are essentially labeled as time savers or quality of life improvements, where let's say you're playing a single player game and you have to harvest 100 logs of wood in order to build some other thing.
right.
Instead of spending the few hours to do that yourself, you can buy the in-game currency, which then you could use to buy a stack of logs that just saved you a few hours. That's something that has also proved very valuable
Interesting.
within single player games, single player, AAA games, but then also within the mobile space, is that people are willing to, I mean, it's weird, the kind of self-imposed spend money to save time on a video game that they choose to play. But
It's
that's, yeah,
it's an
proves lucrative.
incredible jam for certain generations. Go, what are you doing? But it's economic. It is a pure. What was it? What's that first one that came out? Kings and whatever. You could build your own king, but you had
Oh,
the
Clash of Clans.
Clash of
Yeah,
Clans. Yeah, that was a great one. But it's going to take you 2 days to build the fort, or or yeah, Clash of Clans. I
exactly.
forgot about that. And so all of these things. What's the latest one? I just saw that zombie one with the. But okay, so the model is get them in. It's got to be engaging, but then boy, talk about nuance and ways to figure in. I mean, we're going to take it. It's everything from it's going to take them 15 hours to build this, and we're going to offer that. Boy, that's huge. Okay,
Yeah.
wow,
Oh, the psychology that goes into that, I'm sure. Of just you have to
is
wait until you have to give a certain amount of achievement within the game to
right.
kind of drive that engagement, and then it's like you slowly start introducing you could do this, and you
Mm.
could buy this.
And then the psychology of the guy who plays hard for 3 weeks and then disappears. So, whoa, wait, what's going on here? So we got to ping him off, quote unquote, off game to get him back in game. Stuff like that. Wow. Well, that to me is fascinating. I'm not sure where that. I mean, I got to think about that. How it could actually pull into B2B side, but and so here it is. So kids, quote unquote, who are growing up on that model are going to be someday decision makers that are very familiar with that model. So they're going to look at the old school. What do you mean? I got to what? It's just going to jam them up. So maybe getting ahead of the curve is to look at that. That's
Yeah, I
interesting.
mean, I think where that ties in maybe is reducing the entry price
Yeah.
for things. If you're expected that, okay, well, if I'm going to continue paying for this each month, why am I paying anything up front?
Right.
I think that is going to be something that is very standard. I mean, beyond now video games moving to that is how entertainment works with streaming services. You don't buy movies anymore, and you also, if you subscribe to Netflix or Hulu, you don't pay anything up front. They just start you on the monthly subscription. So there may
Right.
be more expectation, as so many things move to the as a service model, that there is no upfront fee or payment. You just start with the monthly pricing or whatever it
Right.
is.
Interesting, yeah, and I think that might be where the stumbling block is because the B2B is very can be capital intense, right? You're putting in an air conditioning system for a huge building, so there's capital involved. You can't really subscribe to that per se. You could, but then the capital expense is shifted to the provider, so
Yeah.
that might be the difference there. But I'm sure there's a way to figure that out because right, software there's no when you're making software, the capital is human capital, and that could be cheap as heck. There's no so when you're not really buying any physical asset when you engage in one of those games, especially when it's online. So there's really no acquisition cost or on both sides for customer acquisition. That's pretty easy. It's all inbound for consumers to purchase. There is no. I don't need the hardware per se. I've got the phone. I've got the PC. I've got everything. So I just need the software. Interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, one last piece that probably ties into that
Mm-hmm.
is a lot of companies are trying to get cloud gaming going,
Yeah.
where
Tell about what does that mean yeah, please.
so that's where essentially you would be running a new game, AAA title off of an external server that is just pinging the information back to you. So it's not running locally on your gaming PC. You could technically stream it from a
Oh.
TV that has no components to run it. But you subscribe to that,
Mm-hmm.
weekly, monthly, hourly. There's been different models, subscription for that service. And maybe that includes access to games as well. Maybe it doesn't. I mean, big companies have been investing in this, including NVIDIA, but it's one that is not taken off. A Netflix is going to
I
be,
was going to mention Netflix
yeah.
with a gaming.
So I think that could become standard where you don't even really need to buy a gaming PC or console. But I think we're far off from that being the standard. And then two, you have to think about multiplayer when people care about a single millisecond of lag. That sending to a server and having them send it back to you I can't imagine that being as quick as your local hardware anytime in the near future.
Yeah, especially the graphics generation. I mean, maybe you could offshoot that and just stream. I'm sure there's a way to do it, but we're not talking twisted pair either. It's got to be some pretty fast and big, wide, huge cables. Not cables, but they have to have enough data streams. Would have to be. Well, that's happening though too. No more dial-up, no 2400 baud for decades now. Interesting. So I'm still trying to figure. Okay, which the whole cloud thing, that's and B2B has been there for at least a decade, I would imagine. So, but you're right. There's a different. It's not really heavy graphics. It's just up and down. Interesting. Wow. Okay. So, one last question, and it's a big one. So you've certainly got a good finger on the pulse of the gaming side. So, if I were let's just say I'm a technology dealer, and things are changing. My market is shrinking or whatever. The business, we're on the downward side of the bell curve, and I'm looking to expand, right? And my guys are looking at everything from EV charging stations to water service to all sorts of real basic things. I'm trying to figure how this may be too much, but is there a play for that channel to do something in gaming. Is there? And I don't know because I don't think so. But I want to push the edges because the distribution
Yeah.
channel right now is all central. There's no third party involved between the end user and the provider, from what I can tell. Except for what did interest me was when you're saying about a server. No, would that have been a third party server hosting games? Maybe that's something. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. What I can say is that the gaming industry is definitely growing in terms of its popularity. Again, its entrance into the mainstream. You have, as you mentioned at the start, you have entire stadiums filled with people watching other people play video games competitively. So I think there's a lot in the esports space, a lot in the streaming space with Twitch or other competitors, and there's a lot of advertising potential within those
How big is that
spaces.
market? What's the TAM? Do you know what the numbers are throwing around in
I
terms?
don't, but it's huge, and I think there were a lot of companies that were kind of late to recognize that
Oh
uh,
yeah.
with companies or with platforms like Twitch, where someone may have 1 million subscribers and they may be getting 5 figures worth of people on every stream. That is such a huge audience to be advertising
Huge.
to. So I think
Well,
that's going to be a growing space, and at least
having said that, Dustin, do you think that people aren't taking advantage of that right now?
it looks like I think everyone is starting to catch on now.
Wow.
I don't think it was. I think it was kind of a little bit of a slow uptake to realize how many people were watching these.
Wow.
But I think now, kind of just. I mean, you go on and check out some of the popular streamers on Twitch, and you can see all of the brands that are advertising them. You go on, and maybe it's even a commercial or two before you get to watch them. So I think now that the industry is kind of caught up with recognizing that advertising potential on platforms like that.
Wow, I haven't even thought about it. I mean, like HP, didn't they buy Alienware or something? I don't know, but now they have a gaming
Dell
platform.
bought Alienware,
Dell.
HP bought Voodoo, like essentially all the PC manufacturers have either bought a gaming subsidiary or started their own.
Mm. And is HP out there advertising? Again, I don't know, but I should go check that out. Is HP, are these?
I mean, they're all out there advertising, and I think too, it's really interesting to see the social media advertising of these gaming companies because it's different from advertising kind of a consumer PC or a business PC, and it's really been interesting to see the approach that different companies take, and what are they doing with HP's Omen line? What is Dell doing with its Alienware line? Are they bringing in top streamers as sponsors? Are they taking a approach of focusing on competition? Are they trying to focus maybe even on humor? You see some of the gaming companies doing that with their social media advertisements. So, I mean, honestly, go on and check it out. It's interesting to see the different. You can really easily sense the angle that the different companies are taking of how they approach the gaming community with their
This
products.
I find extremely fascinating from the outside that because the market to me looks humongous. I would just assume that there were people already cracking that wide open. But I get it. You kind of swerved in it. It's different than a business. It's different than the B2C. It's in the middle somewhere, and it is also social, which is totally different to HP. Come on, they're still putting up billboards somewhere. I guess I don't know. I probably should have said that, but yeah, it's a whole different model. I'm just surprised because I got to Gatorade, all those whatever those guys are doing, but down to the mouse. Logitech. I'm sure they're out there doing something, but and the big chairs and everything, but more mainstream because you're talking huge numbers. That demographic has got to be just dripping with potential and opportunity.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah, and now it's really one that doesn't seem to have an age limit because you have people that grew up with Atari and the very first Nintendo, but then you also have their kids, and then you're going to have their grandkids, and it's something that is just going to continue
Cross generational.
to
Yeah.
grow, yeah, in its demographics.
Wow. Well, I didn't. I mean, talk about being inside the forest and not seeing the trees. That's I wow. So that's huge. Now, okay, so back to my original question, which will blow most of my guys' mind. There's no way they're going to figure a way to get into the gaming industry, but somebody might, and it's just huge. I got to figure that one out. I mean, because it effectively with this channel, it tries to be the third person between the OEM and the end user, and there was very good reasons for it back in the olden days because the OEM couldn't service it, so blah blah blah. So I don't know if there is, but oh, wait a minute. So how about, I don't know if you remember HP's Halo rooms. Do you remember that? It was a huge conference room with multiple cameras, and in theory, you could all be sitting around the same conference table, which you weren't, but and there was a lot of technology that went in it so that when the image on the screen looked, and it was sized perfectly to be what it would look like 3 feet away from you, right? So it was kind of rudimentary, two-dimensional, but it had all the microphones that you could actually overtalk, which was extremely interesting because you can't do that now. But there may be something here with this, especially with the the remote and everything. If we could just personalize it, but that would be interesting. Wow, years ahead though.
Yeah, and then as I mentioned before, that Apple product is looking
Yeah.
to do that, and they're trying to find ways to blend, that kind of in-person, remote, meeting, and how can you make it like the person is in the room talking with you?
Well, I'm going to hate to pull out the old whatever one. I was just, the holodeck and Star Trek and the when the Jedi's were sitting around in.
I was thinking of
Star
Star Wars when you brought up the HP Halo. So yeah, I'm right.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's what it was. A bunch of, in theory, they didn't know it at the time, but that was what they were trying to do, right?
And you never see them asking if they can hear each other, if they can see each other. There's no tech checks. Everything just works perfectly.
You're right. It's like you're muted.
Yeah, it's just 30 minutes of that in the middle of the movie.
That's funny. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, one. Look into your crystal ball, and I'm going to say gaming. I'm going to let you go there. What's coming up in the next 6 to 12 months, and then if you want to go beyond that.
Ooh, I think we're going to see a lot of companies trying to integrate AI. I really don't have a guess of how successful that is going to be, but I think we're going to see a lot of talk around it. I think we're going to see a lot of publishers and developers talking about the integration of that. And on the player side, I'm really interested to see if we get continued pushback on the games as a service model. There is pushback on it. There's people that are upset about it, but it really doesn't seem to put a dent in the amount of players it's able to bring in on a popular game. So, but you also see some game developers kind of testing that, where it's like, well, how far can we get with the microtransactions and the games as a service? So I'd be interested to see if, and I'd say that'd be in the next year or two, enough pushback to maybe have any companies pull back on that, or if we are just going to continue being games as a service, they're free, and it's all about finding ways to monetize that on a regular basis.
Interesting. Do you think the market will expand in terms of end users and adoption? I think so, but you know what I mean? Are more people going to be playing games a year from now than are now?
I think so. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I would tell you this from our side. The office technology, just like what you said, more people are going to try and figure out this AI thing. I honestly believe that the sector that you're talking about should be able to adopt it more, because you said publishers. And right now, ChatGPT, the generative, the LLMs are pretty much geared at, quote, content creation, publishing, copyrights, whatever, creative side is the easy one. On our side, we're trying to solve business problems and get consultative, whatever, acumen from on our data specifically, but compared to the rest of the world, and streamline the efficiencies on how we bring things to market, less how we create things. It's a little bit more difficult. Right now, that's right where AI is aimed at. How am I going to make my service desk more efficient? Okay, that's an easy one. But not, like I said earlier, what can I put together to offer my clients, my people who are buying copiers from me today? Here's my AI SKU. And I don't even see that coming. I don't know, but that'd be fun. But very interesting. I think the collision between the two is happening without anyone really paying attention, especially after what I just learned about the advertising side. That to me is like, are you kidding me? There's billions of people out there. Go get it. Anyway, so yeah. Any final thoughts as we ended here? I think we're at the. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, we're at time. So yeah, I think I'm good, Greg.
All right. Well, hey, thank you very much for coming in and getting together with me. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, what's your email? Give out your email.
Yeah, that would be ddowns at Gap Intelligence.
Excellent. Okay. Well, then we'll sign off for now. Look forward to this will be on YouTube and wherever. So, but thanks again. This has been really enlightening and fun, and I appreciate it. And this is actually all the ones I've ever done. This one is on the edge more than anyone else's. This is like at the universe, edge. We've blowing things away. I think we can look back on this in 36 months and go, oh yeah, But anyway, all right, we're gonna end it here, guys. Thank you very much. Take it easy and have a good day.